Hello, I'm back. It's nice to be back here, connected. Um, I want to say thank you to all of the nice comments. Um, I want to say please feel free to continue commenting. Please feel free to write me, um, ask me a question, or just vent. Um, I got the time, and to be honest, it would probably be is it would be good. I would enjoy it. It would be good for me. And so, thank you. And I also want to just send out love and compassion for people that are stressing out right now, who might be suffering mentally or physically. Um, I feel you. Um, I did get a question somebody wrote me. Um, doesn't happen a lot for me, and in fact, this is a very unique because the question's actually in French, and so it's a really good question though, and I'm going to je parle un peu le français, mais pas beaucoup vraiment. So I'm gonna read it. Dis-nous comment nous pouvons vous aider. As far as what I can understand, the translation is tell us how we can help. So, this is a very good question because it's something that I've been addressing in myself very recently, and it's been a very long process of trying to understand the best way to provide help uh, for others. And the first thing that popped into my head in French was la première, servez-vous, which means first, serve yourself. And this concept is has been a difficult one for me throughout my life. I grew up in the Midwest here in Kansas City, and I moved away for a long time and lived in New York, but moved back here 8 years ago. And having grown up in the Midwest, I noticed something about there's a really strong I don't know if this is the Midwest or if it's just my particular family upbringing, but there's a strong aversion to being perceived as a selfish person. Um, like getting somebody to take the last piece of cake at a table of Midwesterners is next to impossible. And so I think I, like maybe a lot of people, grew up really confusing the concept of being selfish and the concept of practicing self help. And I've been kind of really becoming mindful of self help and its importance. And I think for a large part of my life, I considered people who were into self help very selfish. And it turns out that that's pretty much 100% the opposite. And it's I I like to use there's a really great visual example that I like to run inside my head sometimes if I'm confronted with the opportunity to help someone, and it's the safety instructions that you receive when you're flying in an airplane from the flight attendant right before you take off, and they're talking about that oxygen mask that comes down, and they always say put the mask on yourself before you put one on your kid, because like if you start to put one on your kid and then you're not getting oxygen, and you might like pass out, and then neither of you get the oxygen, and you're just both screwed. And like it's pretty simple. Maybe it's a cliche, but it's a really great way to look at things. And even when we're talking about not even doing like physical things, but just being kind of like emotionally there for people and stuff like that, like I've come to learn that a lot of times in the past when I felt like I wanted to help or do something for somebody, um, a lot of times my intentions were they had strings attached. We'll just put it that way, or they were connected to how I wanted to be perceived versus how I really was or what I really am. And like um, even though the idea of being a selfless person or being a helpful person or being able to provide something or do something for somebody, there's a strong urge to want to be that kind of person unless you're mindful of your own motivations and your own feelings. I've found personally that a lot of times um, on down the line, as far as how I feel, um, my expectations, things like that, um, could end up making or creating bigger problems than I might have initially solved with helping somebody to begin with. And that's a really tricky and a complicated process, but it's also kind of a fun one, and especially relevant right now considering this seemingly crazy contradiction we're living in right now, where in a lot of ways the less we do, uh, the more we're helping. And a lot of times that's true. I'm really learning that's true when it comes to like talking. So, on that note, I'm going to stop talking. I just want to say again, thank you so much for listening. And if any portion of this is useful to anybody, I'm very grateful for that. Okay, so this is a song called "Light Bulbs in the Rain." It's there is a part of the last verse that is dedicated to Mina Edison, who was Thomas Edison's second wife, and she was a very loyal and helpful partner. She took care of a lot of his affairs and his scheduling, and I would say greatly a big part of his success. And I just feel like she deserved a shout out, and I kind of think it's important to consider any person who is in the spotlight for great recognition, and to realize that there are probably a lot of people around them who you might have never heard of that are quite possibly just as responsible for some of their successes, and it's good to keep an eye out for that. I know what I want, and probably this will change. I set my sights on so much I don't know what's out of range. And there you are right there, set in all your ways, sharpening up your signage for sexy nurse parades. You play that angry wife like you've rehearsed it your whole life. We learn our lines, and then we play our parts. Forgive me not for offering to criticize your work, but for the record, I do a pretty good mean jerk. Let's infiltrate the bubble. We'll break it like an egg. Remote control the rubble by learning how to beg. 'Cause our chosen direction is paved with rough terrain. We'll cure the world of blindness with light bulbs in the rain. So thank you, Mina Edison, for wasting your whole life. Flip a switch, then we fall apart. I'll drive those horses day and night into your heavy car to fix the broken syndrome of your heart. Go! I love you until we meet again.